Hello, I'm Ronald Day, Associate Vice President of the David Rothenberg Center for Public Policy, and welcome to Both Sides of the Bars, a discussion-driven show that examines the criminal justice system from various perspectives, including from those most impacted by the criminal justice system. We discuss critical questions about how the criminal justice system works, its intersections with social justice, and highlight the efforts that are being made to improve the lives of everyone that is affected by it. We ask you, the viewer, to spread the word about both sides of the bars and to share your comments with us on Twitter at The Fortune Society. Today, I'm honored to have two phenomenal guests with us. Jaime McBeth, who's manager of food and nutrition services at the Fortune Society, and Kandra Clark, grant writer from the Fortune Society. So Jaime is a registered dietitian. She studied nutrition at Columbia and performed her clinical training at Yale and was the director of communication and Women's Sports Foundation, nutrition educator at Columbia, and most recently worked as a dietitian, nutritionist with psychiatry patients at Princeton Healthcare. Thank you. We're honored to have you here today, Jaime.
Thanks for having me.
And one of our grant writers at the Fortune Society, Kandra Clark. Since September, Kandra earned her associate's degree in criminal justice from LaGuardia and also a bachelor's in humanities and justice from John Jay, and now she's pursuing a master's in public administration at John Jay, majoring in urban affairs. She's worked at Fortune for close to 5 years now, and she recently was a recipient of the Julio Medina Freedom Fighter Award that was issued by, tell us the organization.
Citizens Against Recidivism.
That's right. So good for you, Kandra.
Thank you.
So welcome both of you to Both Sides of the Bars. So today we're talking about a really important topic, which is nutrition, and particularly how nutrition, right, and food insecurity impacts people who have been impacted by the criminal justice system. So one of the things I want to start with, Jaime, is the audience doesn't know a lot about the services that the Fortune Society offers as it relates to nutrition. So why don't you just enlighten the audience and tell us about your personal motivations for pursuing nutrition options for Fortune clients, and how do we even come about being an organization that is focused on making sure that we serve nutritious meals to our clients?
Well, as far as the services that are concerned, we have a lot of services currently. I guess I would start with nutrition education because that's how I started at Fortune. So we have workshops throughout the year that are very hands-on and behavior-driven, meaning focusing on changing behavior rather than sort of being didactic and telling people what to eat. We have cooking demonstrations that attract a few hundred people every week. Same thing, very hands-on. We serve 1,000 meals a week through our cafeteria, so that's breakfast, lunch, and dinner. We have a hot breakfast bar, we have a farm stand, we have a garden where we grow herbs for the kitchens and also sell those. So we have a myriad of programs.
How do we go about being a criminal justice and alternatives to incarceration focused organization that now has this really important component that involves nutrition?
I think, it to an extent it predates me at Fortune, but from my understanding, what I always hear is that because food is nourishing.
Yes.
So I don't think it came out of necessarily people wanting to serve nutritious meals.
Yeah.
I think like at our LIC location where we have a sort of a younger population, I think that some of the vice presidents there, feel the need to nourish the kids.
That's right.
Or nurture them. And so they felt that instead of feeding them sandwiches, let's start feeding them meals. And I think that it evolves from there. Because when I came, they were sort of doing their best to feed the meals, and sort of my role when I got there was to sort of transform that into, well, let's serve nutritious meals, not just sort of nourishing as well, but sort of professionalize the food service. So it's sort of been an outgrowth from that.
Got it. And Kandra, we talk sometimes about how people that have been impacted by the criminal justice system complain about not receiving nutritious meals inside. And so you've been writing grants, the federal government has awarded grants and so forth. So tell us about that really important intersection between like criminal justice involved population and nutritious meals.
Absolutely. Right now, the government and foundation funders are really seeing the correlation between poverty, criminal justice system, incarceration, and food insecurity. So they're seeing that food insecurity is a systemic issue, and that the people that are most affected are in specific locations throughout New York City that are also specifically affected by poverty, and also are the neighborhoods that have the most people returning home from the criminal justice system. So I think finally, you know, the government and the foundations are really understanding that there is a connection between the criminal justice system and food insecurity, and they're trying to, you know, do their best to start funding programs that are trying to fix that problem. So.
Got it. And so you also have some experience, right? Having been involved in the criminal justice system, as have I, and knowing that there are times when, again, not just complaining bitterly, but knowing that the food does not provide a lot of nutritious value necessarily. So you have, you know, tell us about some of those experiences.
Yeah, I've been, my first actually experience at Rikers, I guess I probably didn't realize how food insecure people that come from the neighborhoods that we come from and who deal with the type of social problems that we deal with from an early age until I really got to jail and prison. And Rikers was my first experience with it. When I was sitting in the bullpen, there was another girl that was in there, and it was past the time that they had already fed us the bologna sandwiches for dinner, and she was still hungry. And you know, she was, you know, telling the officers, please feed me, and they refused to feed her. So she pulled the garbage can close to the bar, and she stuck her hand through the bar and actually took bologna sandwiches out of the garbage to eat it. So I've seen, you know, just how food insecure you can be when you're incarcerated. If you don't have family to send you packages, you're really either stuck eating the state food, which is very high in carbs. It's not nutritious really at all. So they fill you up because it's a lot of potatoes and rice, but it's not necessarily nutritious for you. You don't get a lot of vegetables. You don't get a lot of like good meats. And then if you can afford to go to commissary, even when you go to commissary, it's mostly junk food, really high in sugar, and so those are kind of your options. You're either stuck with eating like really starchy foods or really sugary foods, and if you're lucky enough, then you can have your family send you in some packages, so that way you can at least get some type of nutritious foods.
Exactly, and I'm sure that that is contributing to high incidence of diabetes and high incidence of, you know, other ailments that we know, you know, have been devastating poor communities already. So Jaime, tell us about, you know, more specifically about the food programs that we have. For example, we went from being an organization that is providing, you know, nutritious meals to our clients, but we're also doing it with the community now. So what are we doing that involves the community?
So everything that we do outside of the actual meal service to clients, everything that we do is basically involves the community.
Okay.
So our nutrition education workshops are open to the community. Probably our biggest sort of event that involves the community is the weekly produce giveaway and cooking demonstration.
Yes.
So we have a wonderful chef on Wednesdays, Elida Garcia, who prepares very culturally competent meals with local ingredients from local farms that we partner with.
Wow.
So it's a great marriage of sort of connecting with the local food system, connecting with the community, but presenting it in a way that's familiar to people. You know, she'll do like a veggie paella or sort of a remixed sweet potato casserole that's helpful and nourishing. Because, you know, it's sort of my personal, or one of my findings professionally, that you have to meet people where they are. You know, one of the things I say often is, my population doesn't care a lot about kohlrabi. I understand that it's very popular and that kind of a thing, but, you know, I'm not gonna do a whole lot of good trying to introduce people to sort of like the hot vegetable that's out, or the sort of the food craze. People want things that are familiar to them, so that has often a lot to do with culture. So in addition to the cooking demonstration, she'll give samples and sort of recipes, explain how to make it, to really use the local ingredients. And then they get a bag at the end, a 4-pound bag of fresh produce from the local farm, so they can go home and try to make it themselves.
Got it. And what's the produce that's in the bag? So like vegetables, lettuce, tomatoes.
So last week we had blue potatoes.
Blue potatoes.
Blue potatoes, carrots, onions, celery. This week I think we have fresh cranberries, sweet potatoes.
And my understanding is that we have people generally on lines waiting to collect the produce, right, from the West Harlem community?
Yeah, to attend the cooking demonstration and get the bag afterward so they can go home and make the recipe. So there definitely have been, when the weather's good and sort of at the height of the season, we're definitely seeing over 300 people a week come to the cooking demonstrations, which is sort of unheard of. And if you read a lot of the literature, it's like, well, how do we get this population to eat vegetables? It's like, it's not, let them, it has to be affordable. So we're giving it away, and it has to be sort of good. People just don't want to eat whatever. So I think that the cooking demonstration is sort of a shining example of that, but it's not sort of challenging. It's sort of, as long as you're looking at the population as sort of humans, sort of not like this population that we have to help. Sort of meet them where they are, and it sort of come to us that way.
And Kandra, why do you think the foundations and other funders are now more interested, as you were alluding to earlier, in funding projects like this?
Part of it, I think, actually is research, because more research has been done on it and more connections have been made. So I think it's just, and also more, we're spreading the word more, and we're not the only nonprofit that is, and there's a lot more local farms that are also spreading the word and really showing that there's another way to do this, showing that there is other options to feed people affordable and healthful foods. So I think it's just more out in the open now.
And so Kandra hits, I think, something that's key. So affordable and healthy, right? There's this issue about people feeling like I don't have enough money to pay for food that's actually healthy. And there's a lot of, discussion about that. Because some people are eligible for like SNAP, which is here food stamps, and can people buy nutritious meals, fruits and vegetables, etc., when they're low income?
If they want to.
So tell us about the process.
In other words, you have to be motivated, both motivated and educated, to be able to do so. So as a dietitian, that's my job, is to not just educate people,
but to help motivate them.
But motivate them before even educating them.
So
you can always, bodega, gas station, street, you can always find, to me, a healthy, affordable meal. So one of the exercises I go through with people is, I'll say, you have 50 cents, you go into the bodega, you want a healthy meal. And people say, or you want a healthy snack, not a meal, obviously, right? Not necessarily.
But 50 cents,
So I say, you can get, most people, you can only really get chips for 50 cents and this and that. I'm like, but they can sell bananas. They just do, because they they're not as perishable as other fruit. Bananas tend to be filling, they're heavy, if they're large, it's 2 servings of fruit. You can get a couple of bananas. Or if you're talking about $2, you can get a bag of nuts and a piece of fruit. And that's at any convenience store, that's basically possible. So that's where the motivation kind of has to come in. You have to be going in with a mindset that I'm going in here to get something nourishing. I'm not going here to get junk. So it's a shift. But as long as you have those two things, it doesn't matter as much where you're buying from. That being said, that doesn't mean that there's not work to be done to make more nourishing food available and affordable to certain communities, because obviously it's a lower bar in certain communities. Like, I don't have to think about it necessarily in certain neighborhoods. It's automatic that I'm going to walk into a store and be able to find, maybe not that affordable, but at least something nourishing, But certain communities, it's something you do have to think about. So there's work to be done in sort of making that equitable, but until that work gets there, we need to work on people's motivation and their education.
What about inside of correctional facilities? For example, Kandra, I was there, you was there, and I think a part of the issue is, like I remember back years ago, guys would tell me in like the 60s, a correctional facility was there, then they had, at least in New York State, there was a farm that was adjacent to it, and they would eat the fresh eggs and the meat and so forth from the farm. Whereas nowadays, they have like this quick chill process where the food like comes in bags in this huge like industrial process. They just take the chicken, for example, and other meats out the bag, just throw it in the oven, and that's it. So a lot of individuals have reservations about eating the food because they feel like it lacks the nutritional value that it should. So what do we do inside of correctional facilities? Is there an opportunity? Because some people, as you said, Kandra, they're not getting packages, for example, from family where they're getting fresh fruits and vegetables. So what do we do inside of correctional facilities? Is there ways to promote healthier eating inside of the jails and prisons?
One idea I really like, if they would actually bring back the farming in prisons. I was at Beacon Correctional Facility, and it was a camp. It was a work camp. It was minimum status. We had no gates. There was no reason why we shouldn't have had a garden there. And that would have ended up saving the correctional system money also, because they wouldn't have had to been purchasing those types of food from the industrial corporations. They could have actually grown some of their own food. So I'm kind of confused as to why they ever stopped doing that. I think that that's something that they should definitely bring back. And then with the food that they do have that's processed, maybe, I don't know, coming up with a different plan instead of processing the food that way. Maybe sourcing it from local farms, not in addition to maybe having their own farm, but also sourcing it from the local farms. That would be another option that they could do, and that would be, you know, empowering small urban farmers and financially helping them, as well as, you know, reducing the finances that it costs the correctional system to actually purchase food for the people who are incarcerated. So I think that would be another option that would be better than what they're doing now.
And that seems to be a complete shift, which is consistent with what you were saying, because you said it's about motivation, right? And I think there's, you know, trying to motivate like correctional systems to do things differently, because you think about it, when you train someone like you do, and I'd like to hear more about that, because you said we have volunteers working with us. You're growing fresh fruits and vegetables and so forth. But some people don't know that they can do that on a small scale and be able to eat. But then you can probably train, as you're saying, Kandra, people inside who had no idea necessarily about how to do this, and that be something that they could do once they come home. Right, those are some skills that they could acquire. So tell us, like, we have volunteers that are doing this.
Well, that's where we get some around volunteers from. A couple of our volunteers did the horticulture program at Rikers. So I don't really have to train them. They're kind of off and running when they come, you know, and sort of in terms of tending to our garden.
Wow.
So so those programs that are out there, at least from, you know, the volunteers that I've received, seem to be working. But other training in terms of food service and food handling and sort of being chefs, you know, if people have an interest, we take them. What's the reality is, though, sometimes the only jobs that people can get when they come home are in industries like food and trucking and things like that. So we do, again, get people who have some food background, and we sort of get them the experience and maybe pair them with people who are more experienced. What they probably don't have, though, they might know how to cook or how to, you know, tend a garden or those kind of things, but they don't necessarily know about sort of the more helpful presentation of food. Exactly. So that's where
where you come in.
Yeah. Because I think even though people sort of have the experience you have where they're not thrilled, they weren't thrilled when they were inside in terms of the types of food that was being served, they'll still come home and tend to cook the same way.
Yes. Like
that's the kind of food that was being served oftentimes, like carb heavy. They're just used to it.
Yes.
Yeah. So it's like, if you really didn't like that for that long, let's do something else.
Yeah.
So sort of breaking that. They might have like the basic skills. They might have like knife skills in terms of chopping, cutting, all that kind of thing. And you know, there'll be a great saucier, know all those kinds of things, how-tos, but they're not thinking about, why am I doing this? You know, why am I cooking this kind of a thing? So that's usually the training that we have to sort of.
Yeah, I think one thing
rethink.
is, can we bring something like this to scale? Because you could have a small program, like you said. I think that was an excellent suggestion, Kandra, because you do have some facilities that have like small, like horticulture programs, but not many.
Mm-hmm.
And then those programs are being reduced like now rather than the reverse. So a lot of the vocational type programs, those are actually leaving facilities rather than having them like reinvigorated so that individuals could be educated about something that's really important with respect to their health.
I mean, I think that for the public, I think that the thought is, well, why should we do that? You know what I mean? Why should we do that for people who have committed crimes or, you know, or have done things that are...
Because 95% of them are returning home.
Exactly.
That's one
so-
reason why we should do it, because we're still going to have to deal with the problem because 95% are going to return home.
So I think that, you know, we have to sort of give them real reasons
Yes.
why we should do that. And it has to be, you know, in self-interest, and I think that self-interest in real time. So I think that that's why it's so important that our programs are open to everyone,
Exactly.
because this is why you should do it.
Yeah.
You know, we have people who are criminally justice involved
Yeah.
who are helping to bring these programs to you.
Exactly.
You know, so there has to be, I think, great examples of how it benefits everyone
Exactly.
in a very immediate and not conceptual way. Do you know what I mean? So, and you know, sort of the fact, like I was saying, that when they come home, I don't have to, like, especially with the horticulture programs, they know a lot oftentimes. So I think that doing more good work on the in the community, and sort of letting people know that people can really re-enter in a very real and serve.
Yeah.
It has to be about service, I think, before people, the community at large, and sort of accept the idea of, you know, bettering the food offerings inside a prison.
Got it.
You know.
And Kandra, I mean, you made the point why we should do this. 95% of people come home. That's the one reason. And you're convincing funders to do it. So what is one of the compelling reasons for them to do it?
Well, one of the main compelling reasons is the fact that 95% of them come home, and if we really want to reduce the recidivism rate, you know, it's statistically proven that occupational skills trainings and opportunities to employment and towards education when you come home is like the #1 way to reduce recidivism. So I think if we really wanted to talk about mass incarceration on, you know, a global level and on the national level, that we should be thinking about ideas that could help reduce it on those types of levels. And occupational skills training, and especially with like food, you know, growing your own food on the farms, teaching them how to, the whole aspects of farming. I mean, that's definitely a transferable skill that they can use when they come home, especially even in New York City now with all the urban farming, the sky garden, the rooftop farming that's happening. So it's a really hot topic right now. So I think that it would be beneficial to give them more of those kind of skills. And that's really one of the pitches that we use to funders is, you know, showing them that these are people too. You know, I speak a lot about how I'm formerly incarcerated to the funders also, so they can have more of like a humanizing, they can really put a human face to something that we're discussing about the criminal justice system. So just being more open and honest about it, and really, you know, physically showing them how the hot spots are all correlated with these things. A lot of them just don't understand if they've never been affected by it. So really getting them to understand those type of issues.
Yeah, and that's important because you talk about there's a double benefit, because not only are we trying to reduce the likelihood that someone is reincarcerated, but if you can acquire some additional skills, as you said, then particularly if it's related to one's health, because then I would just, you know, ask you this question, Jaime. So individuals, for example, who have skills in horticulture, do you think that they're more inclined to transfer their education like to family members and so forth?
Yeah, I mean,
because if someone went in without that education and they learned it while they were there, and then they're telling their children to eat healthier meals, then that's going to benefit not just them, but it benefits the family and benefits the community.
absolutely. I mean, my tech support for the gardens here is my mom, definitely. I mean, just to use a personal example.
Yeah.
Of course, if you have someone very close to you who's very skilled, you know, as my mother is, at something like gardening, like, you know, if I'm ever in the garden and I have a question, I literally, you know, my staff will tell you, I'm like, let me just call my mother real quick.
Wow.
Just because it's fast, easy. It's yeah, you transfer
Like
knowledge.
she's your encyclopedia.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, so you transfer knowledge, and that's sort of the case with food too. For most people, like I learn most about. I mean, I come from a family. My family has a farm still in Barbados. My family's from Barbados, you know. So I come from a family of great cooks and learned a lot about food in that way.
Okay.
I learned about there's huge, especially in the African American community in Caribbean. There's just huge amounts of food knowledge that we're not aware of. That sort of date centuries and have survives, you know, the Middle Passage and all of that kind of thing. So it's a huge legacy that we really can't afford to let go of. So yeah, that's definitely sort of part of the.
Well, what you're sharing with the audience is really, really important. Do you have in a minute recommendations for, you know, how we can, you know, 30 seconds, how we can, you know, improve the nutritional health of the individuals who've been impacted by the criminal justice system and the communities?
I think for me, the two biggest things are probably a mindfulness practice, which we haven't talked about at all.
Okay.
But that sort of speaks to the motivation. If you are not motivated to go into the store and get something healthy, if you're not mindful about that, making those choices throughout the day, then it's pretty much difficult not to do it. And the second piece is sort of having the education about what's right and what's not. But the mindfulness and the motivation kind of come first, I think.
Well, thank you. I mean, we appreciate having you on, Kandra, and you also, Jaime. Phenomenal conversation. And we'll welcome you back to continue talking about this particular issue.
Thank you.
So thank you to both of our guests here for being on both sides of the bars, and thank you for joining us in TV land as well. If you're interested in finding out more about the Fortune Society, please check us out on the web at thefortunesociety.org or on Facebook by typing in the Fortune Society. This is Ronald Day as we critically look at both sides of the bars.